CTBK gives executives and owners of mid-market businesses unparalleled confidence and clarity so you can focus on strategic objectives and organizational success. Their multidisciplinary advisors, accountants, and team members have a wealth of experience and are all available and responsive to each client to ensure the most effective advice, actions, and outcomes no matter the situation or complexity level. That experience base and one-team approach, combined with integrated and efficient way of operating, enable them to be truly proactive partners, doing the best thing for their client every time. Visit ctbk.com or call 716-630-2400 to learn how CTBK can work for you.
Hi, this is Josh Reed, Sports Director at WIVB Channel 4 in Buffalo, and you are listening to the Tim Graham and Friends podcast.
What are you doing?
Tim's been bothering me to do this thing for his podcast. Oh, sorry. I gotta stop this, I guess.
It's Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK, CPAs and business consultants. I'm Tim Graham of The Athletic, usually joined by Jonah Bronstein of Bronstein Sports Plus, but we have a special guest this week and talk about Chiefs at Bills, how the Sabres are going. They play tomorrow against the Washington Capitals. UB football is at Bowling Green. I almost said Green Bay. Probably end about the same way with the way UB is playing. Special guest, though, and tough to get this guest, and I'm shocked, quite frankly, that I was able to land this interview. And it's part of it is for the Men Wear Pink campaign, having him on. He is the breast there is, the breast there was, the breast there ever will be. It is Jonah, the Hitman Bronstein. Hitman, thank you for dropping by Tim Graham and Friends.
Well, Tim Graham, I agree. This is a big interview for you. This is maybe the best interview you've ever done, the best interview you ever will do, and the best interview that ever was.
Well, I can't wait to get into it. Where do you want to start, Hitman? You were telling me before. Oh, wait. Do we want to stick with kayfabe here? Let's. I'm sorry. Now, by saying kayfabe, I've broken kayfabe. Where do you want to start, Hitman?
I'll start here, boy toy Tim Graham. The excellence of breasticution. I've been wearing pink my whole career. This month, I'm wearing pink for a special reason. Raising money, raising funds, raising an awareness for the American Cancer Society in the Men Wear Pink campaign. As you mentioned earlier, I'm the breast there is, the breast there was, and the breast there ever will be. And it's been a lot of fun wearing pink, and now it's Halloween, and I get to dress up like an old wrestler. The only thing, now, we're going to break kayfabe here, Tim. I can't see a damn thing out of these glasses. These are the quintessential Bret Hart glasses. I don't know if you're of my age, maybe you remember you wanted it when you're 8 years old and all you dreamed of was being in the front row and Bret Hart would put his glasses on you. But I didn't know how blinding these are. I can barely see you. I can't read a word on the screen. I can't read what's written on my bracelet here. Can't read my watch. And I'm basically doing this podcast blind. I hope I look good because
you look fantastic. You look fantastic. In fact, I keep flubbing because I can't look at you without breaking up. I've made technical mistakes. So yeah, I know you have the backup glasses.
Yeah, I do, which I'm going to switch to now. And the old glasses are choking me out. But here we go.
All right. Let's get those glasses off you. I don't want to have to call 911.
All right, here we go. How's the mic? I think I jostled it around a little bit.
No, it actually sounds great. It sounds better somehow. Well, Jonah, that's great. And a lot of people don't know, but Jonah does it up for Halloween every year in some form or fashion, whether it be in the press box for a game, dressing up as John Warrow. He's done some things. But so I I think he had kind of dropped the hint that he was looking for his Bret Hart costume and was having trouble. But when I logged on and saw him here today, I just lost it. I didn't actually, I forgot, I guess. I didn't think you'd go through with it.
Yeah, I couldn't find it yesterday, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do for some other Halloween commitments and Men Wear Pink things I wanted to do. And then I was thinking, well, maybe I could still do the Halloween gimmick on the podcast, and I'll do the John Wild costume. But the John Wild costume, you need the full head to toe. It's not really just
That's right.
the headshot, it's the outfit, it's the swagger, it's the replacements CD on the drive-in.
It's a kit.
Yeah.
So you have, I mean, people who are watching on YouTube right now, I guess if you're listening on the podcast, you do need to be told that Jonah's got the full black wig, the sunglasses, which we've talked about, the pink singlet, but we can't really see the singlet from the nips down. Is it a full singlet?
It is. I mean, I could stand up. I don't know if this is gonna hurt us. Do you think YouTube might flag the video?
I'm going to leave
if we
that
show
up to you.
a little
I'll leave
too
it
much
up to you,
skin?
Jonah. Do you want to show the whole thing
Yeah,
or
I'll do it.
okay, let's see.
That
All
gives
right.
you.
Don't
Yep.
tilt that camera down
Yeah.
just even a little bit more would have gotten
Yeah. I mean,
obscene.
this goes full legs. I mean, you could probably catch this on my
No, but it would have,
Instagram.
you would have had we would have seen a presentation, I think, right there.
Right.
Yeah. I don't think you wouldn't have popped out, but that would not have been, it was not about to be framed very well what you were, if the camera were tilted just a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't stand all the way up. I
Okay,
stood
good.
about 75% up.
All right.
But there's a full body shot if anybody's interested in that from last Halloween, and maybe I'll get a new one today. Uh, Maybe we could put it in the show notes or something like that. You click for more,
Right.
subscribe for more.
Well, it's great. Jonah, thanks for going all out. And if I would have, had I remembered, I would have tried to respond. Although I don't know what I have around the house, but I'm sure I could have come up with something.
You're not trick-or-treating tonight? You don't have a costume?
No, I will not be trick-or-treating. Last year, in fact, I handed or tried to hand out candy last year. Nobody came. And the weather was fine. I don't know what the deal was. And I live in a neighborhood where we usually get some action, but last year we just didn't. So I don't know what to expect tonight. Which I'm glad actually, because Daisy, the dog here, Daisy Graham, does not like visitors, and she gets a little anxious. I've already popped her a pill, a downer, a doggy downer, and we had a repairman here at the house today, so she's already a little down. What would you say? I was looking for a good adjective. She's
Dour?
she's unwound a bit. She is a bit, she's not as tightly wound as she usually is. So trick-or-treaters, ringing the doorbell, people walking up and down the stairs in front of the window that she looks out of. Not great. So anywho, Chiefs at Bills. We'll get to the Sabres in a little bit. We'll get to UB football and how they have just fallen off the relevancy table. But obviously Chiefs at Bills, it's the annual, sometimes twice a year showdown between the two best teams in the AFC. I think it's interesting, and it's a point that I made over at The Athletic. Well, a couple of things. I wrote a story about hatred and how fans really have come to, still, as they always have, as NFL films taught us at a very young age and has carried through the generations about the power of rivalries, whether it's the old John Madden Raiders and the Jack Lambert Steelers, or the, Cowboys Giants, or Bills Dolphins back in the day, Ravens Steelers rivalry. There have been some great ones, but the fans still do hate a team. They hate an opponent. But I explored the concept of players just don't hate each other like they used to. There's no Jack Tatum out there, Jack Lambert, Ray Lewis, those dudes. And I interviewed Daryl Talley for it. He was a guy who obviously is dealing with some things that you would maybe cause him to reflect, but he's like, no. And the thing that he doesn't like about today's football is how players pull up or let off when they're about to make a hit, or go gunning after a ball carrier. he misses that aspect of hate in the rivalry. Going back to the Dolphins, Thurman Thomas, when he got cut by the Bills, signing with the Dolphins out of spite, things like that. And, you know, Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes play golf in the off season, and these guys train together and share agents and do personal trainers down in Florida or in Arizona during the off season. These guys mix and match and do all kinds of stuff together, and it's just not the way it used to be. My lead for the story had to do with a couple of years ago, Jonah, as you remember, you were at the game when Travis Kelce caught the 22-yard touchdown pass from Patrick Mahomes down in the corner of the end zone, threw the ball up into the stands, blew him a kiss, made the hard hands emoji with Taylor Swift up in the suite, and then Jason Kelce ripping off his shirt and creating that viral moment where he's screaming into the night with his can of blue light in his hand. And I guessed, I mean, I don't know, but I guess that ball's got to be worth $100,000 or something like that. Especially with the viral moment that was created afterwards. It was a touchdown pass in the playoffs between maybe one of the top 5 quarterbacks of all time and maybe the greatest tight end of all time in a year that they won the Super Bowl, creating a viral moment. And the guy who caught the ball threw it back on the field because he hates the Chiefs that much. He could have put his kids through college. I don't know if he had kids, or bought PSLs to the new stadium or remodeled his house. But no, he hates the Chiefs so much he had to throw it back on the field. Where are you with the Chiefs rivalry, Jonah?
Well, I think you raise an interesting point about sports, professional sports, and the NFL being the biggest of the sports, the biggest of the leagues, in that, all of the players, especially the star players, but all of the players, all of the coaches, definitely all of the owners are on the same team as far as growing the game, growing audience, growing revenues, promoting these big games between, teams like the Bills and the Chiefs, 2 of the very best teams in the game of the year, game of the week, whatever it is. And the adversarial nature of it is a competition, but the life or death competition theme is for the fans. It's for the show, and it's for the television and the spectators. It's not necessarily how all of the participants feel about the magnitude of the game. Now, it is an important game for the season and the standings, and all these players are competitive and want to win. But yeah, I don't sense very much hatred. I think this goes back a number of years, but whether it's Canisius and Niagara rivalries, or it's the Bills and the Chiefs, or the Bills and the Dolphins, and the Bills and the Patriots, there is a lot less disdain and hatred between the opponents. And
Patriots Colts, when it was Brady Manning, when the stakes are high.
Yeah. How many rivalries exist in sports these days where you turn it on and you say these teams really do dislike each other? I mean, I'm trying to think of an example in the NBA, because I feel like there are some of them. There might be some players that don't get along with other players
Think
because
of hockey,
of
as
things that have
physical
happened.
and as passionate as especially in playoff hockey and how intense it gets. When was the last time we had a Avalanche Red Wings? I mean, that was a long time ago. You don't even really get it in hockey anymore.
Right. But at the same time, so if you're looking at this from a fan perspective, you want that animosity because it makes it more compelling and more dramatic and more interesting as a television program. But if we look at sports in general, and you're coaching up youth or high school athletes, you're advocating for sportsmanship. You don't want at least outward displays of hatred. And, we appreciate the friendly rival aspect in high school rivalries more than teams fighting each other or things like that. Not that we want to see fights in the NFL, but I think it functions a lot.
Haunting, like standing over somebody is a 15-yard penalty. And that used to be, you go back and look at NFL films. I know I keep bringing that up, but that was the marketing of the NFL. It's what made the NFL so popular. And it was violence and viciousness. And you go back and it's amazing to see, like, it's all illegal now. Like all the things that John Facenda was voicing over and had the dramatic music underneath. It was, a lot of it would be 15 yards.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm wearing this getup, so I might as well tie professional wrestling into it. But it is a lot like professional wrestling. Now, NFL football games, the results are not fixed. At least we believe they're not. But there is an unreality to the creation of rivalries and teams that hate each other and things like that for the sake of the fans, because it is more fun to, you know, hate the team you're playing against and boo the opponent and things like that. So some of that is built up and propped up. Uh, and in, not that the Bills and the Chiefs are going into the tunnel after the game and, you know, shaking hands and loving each other so much, or you're working together like wrestlers do. But before and after the game, there's certainly a lot less animosity and adversarialness between NFL players than there are during the game, or how the fans and the viewers and the spectators interpret it as they're watching.
Yeah, I think that the NFL, like wrestling, embraces the negativity. Now, like you say, wrestling, it's scripted, it's more soap opera, it's more, it's more, it's fake, whereas the NFL, things happen a lot more organically. Some of it is structured, and it is, kind of forced, but I don't think that it's not fixed or rigged or scripted. But the one thing that the NFL does is, it embraces, I think, or not outwardly, but I think they're not as sensitive to negativity as the other leagues are, or as that you would expect any business to be, through a public relations lens. And what I'm getting at is, for instance, the Ray Rice incident, as horrendous as that was, and as what Ray Rice did, and also how the NFL handled it, was a scandal in many different ways. But if you went to NFL.com or tuned into the NFL network at that time, you saw coverage about how the NFL was handling Ray Rice. Now, yes, it's probably spun a little bit, but they didn't shy away from it. If something like that were happening in the National Hockey League, you don't see it on the NHL network or NHL.com. The trial in Canada of the Canadian junior players, that wasn't something that NHL network was talking about. MLB network, NBA TV, all that stuff. But NFL just absorbs it as part of the show. And I'm using that a bit sarcastically, because I don't think they're that callous as like they view domestic violence as just part of the show. And yet it is. It's just the negativity or something bad happens. It's all part of under the umbrella of this entertainment juggernaut, of us leering at it and following along is, how's this going to unfold, whether it be through the courts or suspensions. And, is this guy going to get what he has coming to him? Is Goodell, analyzing every step of Goodell's handling of a scandal, all these things. It's, whether, I guess the Bills have had theirs, right? Matt Ariza or Von Miller or, whatever. I mean, name anything. I mean, those things are on the NFL's media sites.
Yeah, I don't know. So then you think that how does that relate to the hate?
Well, it does. I
Aspect
just
of
think
it?
it's fascinating that the NFL, yeah, maybe it doesn't really relate. Maybe we were going off, or I started a little tangent there, but it's just, I think from the wrestling analogy, I was just thinking that, the negativity is part of the show, and it's in many ways, it drives interest and clicks and ratings and dollars, just
Well,
as
that's what I'm
much.
wondering.
But so I think maybe, yeah, the NFL would love for you to hate the Chiefs, even if there's a disconnect between the players who actually are putting in the time and effort. And, I always hate using the phrase blood, sweat, and tears, but it is a great, I mean, it is that, like, who put in all the time and invest actually their bodies. And Granted, they're making a good wage to do what they do, but they're the ones out there for those 3 hours trying to beat the Chiefs.
Mhm.
And yet, in many ways, I think that when it's over, the fans are the ones who have their next 48, 72 hours ruined when they go to work the next morning or carry it longer than the player who has a smile on his face, who just lost the game in gut-wrenching fashion, but within a minute and a half, you see the shot of CBS or Fox as they're going to the next game or going to commercial, the players hugging on the field and getting caught up with the guy he went to college with or played with 2 years ago. Um, Scooter Vertino, friend of the show, who is an executive with TNT Sports, made the great point. These guys are in youth leagues growing up. They're playing together in the off season. It used to be you went to one high school, one college, and then maybe you played for 2 or 3 teams and you weren't as spread around as you are today. Now you're going to multiple high schools. You're in the 7-on-7 camp. You are a part of a class, a graduating class of high school, then your college graduating class. You're working out at these facilities. You have the same personal trainers who are getting you ready for the combine, who are getting you ready in the off season. Now you go to 2 or 3 different colleges. So that's another times 3 different teammates that you've had and you're exposed to. And that the whole us versus them just doesn't exist among players really anymore. By the time they're professionals, they're in the business. They've been in the pipeline since they were 13, probably, maybe earlier in some cases. So I don't know. Now we're all over the place.
Well,
I urge
my
you to read the
wonder.
story because I think it turned out pretty well, but it is just different how that seething hatred just not a thing anymore. Unless you're a fan and because your dad hated the Dolphins or your grandfather hated whatever. And you invest so much as a fan, you invest your money and your time. And now you have PSLs and just the energy that you put into whether it be your superstitions or your process for game day and all the different things, buying the gear, and the frustrations that you may see when your team doesn't win it. They're probably getting over it faster than you in a lot of ways in terms of heading into the off season uh think of all the players who don't care about the schedule being released or what happens in the draft. Like, hey, wait, let me know when it's time to show up for OTAs, that type of thing. Whereas the fans are just living and dying with it.
Yeah, I just wonder if is it a good or a bad thing, or is it moving in a good or a bad direction? Do we want more hate, or are we on a higher plane of consciousness here with recognizing that the players don't necessarily hate each other and the participants on the teams don't hate each other, and that this is more about performance and football as art and television spectacle and less about living and breathing with the competition of it? Or do we want to get back to that? And should players maybe talk a little bit more trash during the week and almost like boxers promoting a fight and try to manufacture the adversarialness in order to make it, more interesting to watch? The NFL probably doesn't need more promotion and more hype and more reasons to watch. But to the point you're raising here, was it more fun back in the day when we thought these teams hated each other?
Yeah, I think so. It was an added element. I do think it was more fun, but it was also more dangerous. And that's why, Daryl Talley, who I interviewed for that story, had some surprising things to say. He's been dealing with CTE. I wrote that story, whatever it was, 10, 15 years ago, regarding his memory loss and suicidal thoughts and depression and bankruptcy and all the things that stemmed from him not being able to think straight. And you don't know if you have CTE until it's diagnosed in an autopsy, but you can suspect it. And a lot of people suspect, including those closest to him and his doctors, based on, I haven't seen the reports, but based on, interviewing, that they believe that, yeah, that too many repeated blows to the head, and he was a warrior, and he always played hurt and all that type of stuff. And many did back then. Daryl Talley was not an outlier of his time. Maybe superlative, but not an outlier. They were a lot like there were players like Darryl Talley, many on all 30 teams. But even he looks back and is like, man, it's just not the way it used to be. I mean, it's just he longs to be able to watch it when it was a little more violent and a little more in your face and a little more defiant. And yeah, so I didn't expect to go down that little rabbit hole. I mean, I was just kind of mentioning the story, but I do think that please check it out. It's over at The Athletic. I wrote it, and but yeah, I'm fascinated by it. In fact, that's the word Jordan Poyer used when I asked him about the disconnect between fans and the players and the negative energy and negativity and hating and wanting. And he said he found it fascinating about how a fan could be so into something he has no control over, or she, that yes, you put the face paint on and you cheer and you may think that you're being loud is going to, get Patrick Mahomes to not complete the third down pass. But it doesn't matter. And so it was just kind of a philosophical, concept of Jordan Poyer, just like, you have no control over this. But he said, I love the fans. I love their passion, but it's just, and again, that's the disconnect. And the story is about the disconnect. Another thing I wanted to bring up that I mentioned over at The Athletic, and Jonah, I'll just ask your thoughts on this. Rather, it's not as, I won't have to give as much word salad about this topic. How about the idea that defensive coordinators are probably in a place right now that they want to make Josh Allen beat them, which sounds bananas, right? He's the reigning MVP, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. I think when it's all said and done, he will go down as one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. And defensive coordinators know that if they make the Bills one-dimensional, Josh Allen, he's going to be throwing the ball. And it's not a direct reflection of Josh Allen, but his receivers, and they're not getting open. They're not getting separation. There's no downfield passing attack to speak of. So take away James Cook and you probably have a better shot of beating the Bills. And I think that idea of we want the ball in Josh Allen's hands sounds a little backwards, but I think it's accurate.
Yeah, not just that. Teams have been beating the Bills or slowing the Bills down by playing a lot of man coverage lately. And that used to be a big no-no against Josh Allen because of his ability to run and his ability to move around in the pocket and receivers getting open against man coverage because it's 10, 12, 15 seconds into the play. But there's been a lot less of that. Josh Allen is not running as much. He's not running as spectacularly. He's not making as many of the great rolling out to his right, ropes down the sideline plays, and those aren't being completed quite as often. And some of that's his receiving talent, but some of that seems to be either a decision by him or the offense or the way the Bills are playing, that they're not punishing teams for playing man coverage in the same way that they used to, and teams are getting away with it. And because the Bills don't have really good receivers one-on-one in those man coverage, it's playing into the defensive coordinator's hands of what they want to do or maybe they wish they could have done against the Bills and Josh Allen in the past, and were afraid to do it at various points in time, but then saw the Patriots have success and more teams now following that blueprint. The Bills need to expect that type of coverage and have answers for that, and the answers for that might just be Josh Allen pulling out his cape and hurdling over people and throwing touchdown passes to himself and just dunking on all 11 guys on defense all game long. I don't know how you game plan that, but that's the answer. Josh Allen being Josh Allen and scaring defensive coordinators back into a more conservative zone-based coverages.
I think that's right. And I also, it's curious, and I know that it's been written about and talked about by, podcasts all over the place. James Cook's lack of involvement in the passing game. He has one target the last 3 games, no catches. On the year, he has 12 catches for 89 yards, no touchdowns. Just 2 years ago, he had, I'm doing this off the top of my head, but I think it was 44 catches, 445 yards, and 4 touchdowns. That's a solid complementary piece to being a running back. And now he's just not involved at all. and neither are the other two running backs. So it's not like Ty Johnson or Ray Davis are coming in and catching all these balls. The Bills just haven't been doing it, and the receivers aren't doing much either. So Josh Allen, is he going to have to return to being the Bills' best running back? Is this going to be just a Josh Allen game where you go out there and Josh, go run around and make things happen and chuck it if you need to or whatever? But yeah, defense, and Steve Spagnuolo is one of the best there ever was. I know I've been saying that quite a bit about the best there ever was. The breast there ever was, the breast there ever is, the breast there ever will be is Jonah Hitman Bronstein. But Steve Spagnuolo is one of the greatest DCs to ever do it. And I think he'll probably figure out a way. And now, again, we're talking about a team that the Bills do beat and have beaten quite a bit. They just don't beat them in the playoffs. But I guess that's another topic, Jonah. Does it matter? What happens with the win or a loss? What happens in terms of the perspective on the 2025 season? Does it change? I think if the Bills beat the Chiefs, there's a belief of, or maybe a relief, but then a belief of, yeah, but they got to do it when it matters. If they lose to the Chiefs, do you think that hurts more than a win would feel good?
Well, there's that you just mentioned, that we've seen over the past few years, that the Bills beating the Chiefs in the regular season, and even the Bills thoroughly beating the Chiefs in the regular season and looking like the demonstrably better team, hasn't carried over into the postseason rematch. There's always the belief and the feeling that winning this game for either team, but for the Bills, would give them seeding and home field advantage in the playoffs, and that's important. Of course, the Chiefs have won in Orchard Park in the playoffs 2 years ago as well. Still, I think the Bills are better off playing that playoff game at home than in Kansas City. But there's also the factor that if the Bills beat the Chiefs, they're still not ahead of the New England Patriots in the division. They're still not ahead of the Indianapolis Colts in the playoffs. They're not locking up home field advantage by beating the Chiefs. They're not winning the AFC in week 9 in a way that it felt like they could do that in week 8 or week 7 or whatever it was.
Last year, the year before,
right,
that
right.
is the way it's felt. Yeah. This year, it feels much more watered down in that regard.
Yeah. On the other hand, it seems like there's a lot on the line for the Bills. Like they have a lot more to lose than to gain. I think that's what you asked. Like if they do not win the game, they don't have the tiebreaker on the Chiefs. They're multiple games with tiebreakers behind the Patriots. There are multiple games behind the Colts. There's a lot of teams with either the same record or a better record. It's another conference loss. Like the Bills' ability to gain the number 1 seed or even one of the top 2 seeds in the playoffs seems dramatically less if they don't win this game at home against the Chiefs. We thought, because of the way the Bills played last year and the way they were coming into the season, that there was a potential for an undefeated home season and the Bills would set some kind of team record for most consecutive home wins. And John Warrow from the AP was asking Sean McDermott about being undefeated at home in the last season for the stadium. Well, now they're no longer undefeated at home. And if they lose this game, that's 2 straight losses at home. And you don't need to win every home game, but championship teams and the very best Bills teams have been either 8-0 at home, 9-0 at home, 7-1 at home. You can't lose very many home games and have a successful season. The whole okay, the Bills can beat the Chiefs in the regular season, but that doesn't mean anything when they play in the playoffs. We also haven't seen it flip the other way, where the Bills lose in the regular season and get their lick back in the playoffs. Maybe that's the formula that they need, but it would lessen the confidence a lot if they don't win this game, especially if they look bad in losing this game. And if weaknesses that the Bills have get exposed even further, I think it, from the fan and media perspective, and maybe even inside the locker room, damages a lot of belief that the Bills can win this game in the playoffs.
Yeah, just a point to make, and I know that you're just talking about the Bills and their home losses, but that road loss to Atlanta keeps looking worse and worse. I don't know if I'll call it up fast enough to be able to.
Well, while you're getting there, let me just say, I think, right, losing to the Falcons doesn't look very good now. But losing on the road on Monday night when you've been winning, those are the types of losses that good teams take. And even a division loss to the Patriots in a primetime game is the type of losses that good teams take. But good teams don't lose many of their big games at home.
The
And
point I was
good,
going to make regarding Atlanta is they've lost 2 games. Now, losing to the San Francisco 49ers in San Francisco 20-10, not great shame in that. But their other 2 losses before that, 30-0 to Carolina, a team the Bills just beat 40-9, and 34-10 against the Miami Dolphins, who just fired their general manager. And everybody is shocked that they haven't fired their head coach. I mean, the Dolphins are lousy. And so those 2 teams beat Atlanta 64-10. And the Bills at times just didn't even seem in that game down in Atlanta. Atlanta's other loss was 23-20 to Tampa Bay. So they have been competitive with wins over Minnesota, Washington, and Buffalo. But to lose to bad teams like they have, talking about the Falcons, it really just doesn't make it just makes that loss that much worse, I think, for the Bills. How are you feeling about your Sabres? And they're not your Sabres. I say that because you go out there and you cover them. But how are you feeling about them? They blow the point against Columbus, but then I think they fought pretty hard last night, get a point against Boston. Just the fact that they're stringing some points together, that alone is encouraging, isn't it?
yeah, it's encouraging that they're able to pull out these points. That's what good teams do. That sometimes you're not the best team on the ice and you didn't win the game, but you found a way to score that tying goal in the third period or get it to overtime, get a point. That's what the Sabres didn't do enough of 2, 3 years ago and missed the playoffs by a point or two because they didn't steal some of these overtime losses. If you look at the teams that are in the playoffs each year, they usually have a high number of overtime losses, boosting that point total. And every game's been different. The games that they've lost in overtime, it hasn't been the same script. And I think that's a little bit encouraging because it's not like the Sabres are showing fatal flaws that are the reason they're losing game after game. On the other hand, they are losses. They haven't won a road game yet. They only have 11 points in 11 games, and 82 points is probably not going to be enough to make the playoffs. So they need to be better. They need to not have their captain turn the puck over in overtime and kind of be the reason that at least that goal was scored and they lost the game. They need their best players to win them games, not lose them games. But overall, I think the vibes, they've been getting better for weeks, and they're certainly better than they were at the start of the season or coming into the season. And there is, I think, some glimmer of hope that they can have a successful season or be competitive toward the end until the end of this season, which is kind of a funny thing to say for a team that's on a 3-game winless streak.
I ask, I mean, I've watched the games and I know that you're watching the games too. So I have an opinion, I guess, to a certain degree, but you're there, you're interviewing the players, you're talking to Lindy Ruff. Where do you think things are with Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen as the number 1 goalie of this team?
Well, he's the highest paid goalie on the team and the goalie they have the most invested in.
They also
And
have 13 NHL goalies. I mean, yes, I'm exaggerating.
yeah,
I know it's not 13, but it sure feels like it.
well, what I'm saying is, he is on paper on the depth chart. You might call him the number 1 goalie, but he's not the number 1 goalie. Alex Lyon has started 9 of the 11 games, and even since UPL's come back and been healthy, he started more games than UPL, and UPL's usage is as a backup goalie right now, not the starting goalie. And I guess he's not the third goalie. He got in there ahead of Colton Ellis, and I kind of think he's maybe on deck to play again before Colton Ellis. But I think the Sabres, with their lack of, they're not sure about his health. And if he's healthy, he played poorly in his one start. Is that because he was healthy or out of rhythm or out of shape? Can he stay healthy? I think they have a lot of doubts about how many games, how many minutes, how many periods he can play right now. I don't know where they're at, or I don't know if they're as worried as fans are about the long-term future of UPL being their best goalie and their number 1 goalie going forward. I think they still have some belief in him that way. But I think right now, they're, I think the Bills have a number of players like this too, where they're just not sure what they're going to get out of him for the rest of the year. And they're kind of operating as if they have, it's almost like Tyler Bass. They're kind of going forward with the healthy player that they have And if UPL gets healthy and can help them later on, if Alex Lyon gets hurt and that's an opportunity for UPL to reclaim the net, that'll happen, but they're not counting on it.
UB, do we want to say anything more about the Sabres? I still feel like we're learning. I hate.
Let me tell you, I think one more thing with the Sabres. I think as much as they've lost these last 3 games and they're not in a playoff spot and they only have a 500 record, I think some things are trending in the right direction with their health. You're seeing the impact that Josh Dunn and maybe eventually Michael Kesselring can bring. They're playing more physically. They lost last night, but they had 40 shots on goal. They had twice as many hits. They blocked a ton of shots. Their expected goals, it was something like 5.2 to 2.7 or 2.3. They really won the game analytically. So they're playing good hockey at times and even consistently good hockey. It's not translating into a really good record, but it's not translating into a bad record. So I think they're slowly building in the right direction, but it might be building too slow and they're not winning enough right now for it to ultimately lead them to the playoffs.
Yeah. When I say we're still learning, it's hard to have a take on these guys yet. And maybe the inconsistency over a larger sample size, we can talk about how inconsistent they are and all the things that they need to do. But right now they seem to still be learning themselves and finding their own identity, that it's almost like trying to hit a moving target to peg these guys as to what they are and what they're going to be for 2025, 2026. This season is, I think there's just so much more to learn that sitting and trying to have a hot take about the Buffalo Sabres just seems premature at the moment. And of course it is for all sports, but two guys who are following them and know that there are listeners and viewers of this podcast who have passions and thoughts about these guys and opinions, probably want to hear a little bit something a little bit more articulate, from me, but I'm struggling to really have a cogent thought about them. Really, it's like I'm just passively. I'm going to let them maybe show me a little bit more before that.
I think you raised a good point about the goaltending. That was the biggest concern coming into the season, was what they had in goal, their health in goal. And it hasn't been a problem. They've gotten good goaltending almost every night. They've had 2 bad goaltending games, one when UPL started and then last night with Alex Lyon. So goaltending is not the reason they're losing or not the reason their points aren't atop the standings. But there's concerns about whether that goaltending will still be good. What's going on with Devin Levi? Have they given up on him? Are they trying to trade him? Does he want to be traded? Is he part of this puzzle if they're searching for a consistent backup goaltender? Having 3 goalies on the roster, will that be something that they need to address later on and correct? Because that seemed to affect the team negatively in years past when they did that. And we'll learn, I think, a bit about the Sabres, or more about the Sabres in the next 2 games. They play the Washington Capitals tomorrow night. Over recent seasons, that's sort of been a referendum game for the Sabres to see where they're at. The Capitals are a competitive and comparable team within the conference, and how well the Sabres play, or if they can beat the Capitals, sometimes tells us where they are. And then Tuesday they play Utah and JJ Peterka, his homecoming game, but also Kesselring and Dunn playing against their old team. And if the Sabres win that game, you'll be coming out of that thinking, oh, they made the right moves and they're moving in the right direction. And if they lose, and specifically if JJ Peterka scores goals and is part of the reason Utah wins, they'll be booing Kevin Adams and saying that this is why the fans will be looking at that game as telling us a lot about the direction of the Sabres.
What about the direction of the UB football program?
Not going well for the season. I don't think, I still have the same general impressions of Pete Lembo as a coach and what he's done overall in a year and a half at University of Buffalo. But this team in this season.
Why are they playing so poorly against bad teams?
Right, and they've played decently against some of the better teams. And
I mean, even the win against Kent, they should have lost the game.
Well, they were playing well and winning against Kent and UMass, the 2 worst teams in the conference. But losing against Akron at home was worse than playing well and winning, not just.
But they came close to losing to Kent.
Right, but it's like, they found ways to win and they did some things well and they won the game, and that's all that matters. Now they lost. And now any kind of calculus you're doing about them contending in the MAC or being bowl eligible even involved winning that home game against Akron. And yeah, there's not a lot to believe in them. They played a lot of home games and they played the softer portion of their MAC schedule already. And they're 4-4. They're 3-1 in the MAC, which isn't too bad. I think they're tied with about 5 teams for second place in the MAC. But there's very little confidence that they can win this game at Bowling Green tomorrow, that they can then go to Central Michigan and win on the road on the midweek action game. And then they have home games against Miami and Ohio, but Miami and Ohio are two of the 3 or 4 best teams in the league contending for the league title. So there was a scenario 2, 3 weeks ago where UB's playing a little bit better. You think, oh, they can get to 7-1, and then who knows how many more games they can win. Now they're 4-4, and not sure how many more games they can win at all. They could finish 4-12, and it's largely the same defense as last year. They did replace some pieces on offense, but it's some of the same pieces on offense. But they're not playing as well, and they don't seem to have a really fatal flaw. The quarterback threw a lot of interceptions in the last game, but overall he's been kind of good for them and not the reason they're losing most of the games. So maybe, Pete Lembo's coaching, I think, stole them a couple wins last year, and maybe that happens again. I think that's kind of what they need, beat a team that they're not supposed to beat to right the ship and make up for one of these losses that they weren't supposed to take. But it's going to be a fight now, I think, for them to win 2 of the last 4 games and get the bowl eligibility. And a month ago, I thought they were in contention to at least be one of the 2 teams playing in the MAC title game. And now I'd be very surprised if they're even in it for in the last week of the season, still have a chance to make the MAC title game.
This is a journalism point to make. This just dawned on me. Quasi-local football, or at least it used to be considered kind of local college football. North Carolina and Bill Belichick are at Syracuse tonight. Remember when the Buffalo media used to cover Syracuse in general, but certainly big games and things like that? Alan Wilson would be making the trip down the thruway. Of course, Empire Sports Network had a contract with Syracuse, so they were showing the games, and they always had their Syracuse shows, and WGR would be talking about it. I mean, that's not that much before your time, is it? I mean, I was working there at the Buffalo News in the early 2000s. They used to go to Syracuse a lot. Jerry Sullivan would go to the basketball games. Like I mentioned, Alan Wilson would go to the football games, and sometimes they'd double team it. They'd go together if the game was big enough. But you got Belichick coming into town. I can guarantee you that it's one of these deals where the local media will be like, oh, that happened tonight.
Yeah, a lot of that's a journalism point about traveling and the World Series. Buffalo News is covering the World Series, but I think 10, 20 years ago, there'd be more Buffalo News people at the World Series. There'd be more Buffalo media covering the World Series.
Carl Jones went up to Toronto. Channel 4 is covering the World Series.
Carl Jones is going up to Toronto tonight for the fan aspect of it. If they win, the party in the streets. But in general, just the time on the news, the time in the news, the space in the newspaper, the intensity of local sports coverage. It is happening during the Bills season and the Sabres season, making it more difficult. But when I got in the business 20 years ago, it just would have been bigger and bigger, and Syracuse was part of that too. Also, Syracuse athletics has maybe lost some stature. Basketball certainly has. Football wasn't always good, but isn't really any better than they used to be. Sorry, Carl Jones, if you're listening. But Syracuse just played here in an exhibition basketball game that if they played that game, when they played here in 2006, I think there was about 15,000 fans in the crowd, and there was 5,000 to 6,000 fans in the crowd for this one. Now, it was an exhibition. It was also the first game Kyan Anthony plays as a Syracuse player. And
it's not Jim Boeheim. That takes some saying out of it.
Yeah. So, but the point on Syracuse football had 3 Western New York graduates on the roster at the start of the season. I think there's 2. I think one of them's left now. But that used to influence whether the Buffalo newspapers, because I went and covered a Syracuse game or 2 for the Niagara Gazette. Definitely a lot of basketball games. They had Niagara Falls players on the team, but we would put Syracuse AP stories into the newspaper as a quasi-home team 15, 20 years ago in ways that probably doesn't happen now.
Yeah. Anyway, it just popped into my head. College football. It's kind of a game. I'm going to watch it. I like to watch Bill Belichick collapse and crumble.
I also remember a point in time, like 2007 or so, when UB football went to play at Syracuse, played them close but lost the game. Turner Gill was the coach. And there was some thought and hope and belief from the UB side of things, from their administration and fans, that if UB would beat Syracuse in a game or be better than Syracuse at some point in time in a football season, that Western New York would stop treating Syracuse like the home team, that they would adopt Buffalo as the home team in ways that they were not 20 years ago when Buffalo was one of the worst programs in the country. I don't know if that's happened. I don't know if there's less Syracuse coverage and less Syracuse fans because people are now rooting for UB.
No,
That's not really what's
I
changing
think
it
it's
either.
changing a changing philosophy at all the different outlets. There is no Empire Sports anymore. And because there's no Empire Sports, that competition's gone. I think some of the Buffalo News felt the Buffalo News attitude was people are going to see it on Empire. We have to at least try to break even with these guys. We need to compete. These are the people who are doing it the best. And so, and I think 2, 4, and 7 probably viewed it somewhat similarly with, to go out there occasionally. And then staffing. And like you say, travel. And people just don't travel. The budget of, I know it's not that far away, but if you do go out there and cover something all day, the drive back and forth, there might be a hotel room involved, the mileage, to pay for the, tank of gas. And then you got two guys, two women, or whoever it is, are, going out there to cover it. That's a staff. That's a shift that you're paying them to be out in Syracuse and not out at One Bills Drive or KeyBank Center. So yeah, there's a lot of things. And there's just, you don't have as many reporters at your disposal if you're the editor making those decisions. So I think it's the just more of a, like I said, it's a business, it's a journalism story more than it is a story about relevancy.
Yeah, and this is something that would happen by chance, not by design, but we might have less sports editors and sports directors who went to Syracuse, which I think sometimes influenced Syracuse coverage and would change the dynamic if you're a signing editor or whoever is not a Syracuse graduate, like many of these people are.
And this will sum it up too regarding just your choices on how to fill out your budget. Um, the Buffalo News doesn't cover every Niagara and Canisius home game. It used to be if you were at home, and including Bonaventure, unless it was really maybe a dog matchup. But if you were at home at Niagara, at Canisius, at St. Bonaventure, at UB, Buffalo News was staffing it in some way. And so now they don't even go down the street. They don't even go down Main Street to Canisius's campus to cover a home game. So they're not going to go to Syracuse. And again, not a knock on the Buffalo News. It's just where I worked and how I know how it used to be, and that's the comparison. So I'm not saying that the Buffalo News is making a bad decision by not covering these games. It's probably smart. In fact, I'm kind of scratching my head a little bit at going, the World Series. I get it that it's the Bisons and that type of thing, but how many people are like, I got to see what the Buffalo News has to say
Well, no,
about this Blue Jays Dodgers series?
I think it's good coverage. I think a lot of it is because it's the AAA affiliate of the Blue Jays, and there's Buffalo storylines and Buffalo connections, and not just the
True, like a
proximity of
feature
the
or
two
two.
cities. Yeah.
But in game coverage, I mean, I'm probably not going to the Buffalo News to see, who won the game, or like a take on how, whether John Schneider or Dave Roberts, did the smart thing in the seventh inning with a pitching change or whatever. I don't. I'm going to go to L.A. or Toronto's media outlets for that, or national, like the Athletic. Pat myself on the back. The Athletic or ESPN or whatever. I mean, they have the sources and the access and all that stuff to actually learn what happened in the game. I'm probably not going to go to the Cleveland Plain Dealer or the Buffalo News or the Pittsburgh Post Gazette. Anyways. Anything you want to plug about Men Wear Pink, Jonah, before we sign off?
Well, today's the last day of October. It's not the last day that we'll be collecting donations, but it is sort of the end of the Wearing Pink, and the, you know, Breast Cancer Awareness Month is October, not November. Tomorrow is Hockey Fight Cancer Night at the arena. I'll be wearing a purple tie to fit that theme. But I had some fun wearing pink this year. Didn't raise as much money personally as I did last year, but the overall campaign's doing very well with some new people we have and the combination of different fundraising events. But if anybody who listens to this podcast or watches this show on YouTube is motivated to assist, you can still find my links on social media. Maybe we can find another way to distribute that, and certainly welcome in any more contributions, any more donations to the cause.
Men can still wear pink in November.
Well, I'm going to keep wearing pink because I can still solicit donations, but also I just purchased so much
You got to be
pink
careful
clothing.
when you're wearing that getup, especially if people are tuning in and didn't see the explanation. Maybe they fast forwarded a little bit. If they see you in that getup and using the word solicit.
Well, or maybe that's going to help us with the YouTube algorithms. I don't know. It's a double-edged sword there. But yeah, I might not wear this again, but I have other pink outfits that I'm gonna, or pink garments that I'm gonna try to figure out
Outfits.
how to
That also
continue. Uh,
outfits. Blouses.
yeah, 50 Shades of Pink. That's what my closet looks like right now.
The breast there is, the breast there was, the breast there ever will be. Jonah, thanks for this. Thanks to everybody out there for watching, for listening. Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK, CPAs and Business Consultants. Please like, favorite, rate, comment, subscribe. Please. It helps our, as Jonah said, algorithm and gets us out there. It helps platform us.
We got another minute
the,
here. I just want to ask you a
yeah.
question. It's not that important, but we got away from it with the Bills, and I kind of want not a prediction, but I was talking about this actually in the Channel 4 studios about who's going to predict a win or a loss. I mean, what is sort of your prediction, or how do you think the Bills' chances of winning this game is? Because it seems like from you and I in the media, but also the fans, the confidence of how the Bills can play in this game against the Chiefs has never been, not never been lower, but it hasn't been this low since probably 2020 or when this rivalry started.
Channel 4, I am picking on Bills Kickoff Live Sunday morning. My prediction will be Chiefs 27, Bills 24, I think. Somewhere it's something. I have the Chiefs with 27 and winning the game. Yeah, I don't like the matchup. I think that the Chiefs are surging. The Bills secondary is going through some things, transition. I do think it was good to get Larry Ogunjobi and Michael Hoyt back on the defensive line against the Carolina Panthers. Max Hairston gets out there, gets his feet wet as a rookie defensive back. Jordan Hancock, Jordan Poyer, who has been a bit of a train wreck. I mean, his last year with the Bills was not great, and his last season with the Miami Dolphins was awful. But to get that, I guess, non-conference experience before the SEC play starts this weekend, it's almost like they got a little scrimmage action in against Andy Dalton. But we're going to see what these guys are made of. Particularly, I'm emphasizing really the defensive backs. And two things. I mean, Taylor Rapp, who didn't play last week, but he's probably done for the year. He had knee surgery. Sean McDermott announced today. But Taron Johnson also appears on the injury report today. He pops up after being healthy all week. He now was limited on Friday with a groin injury.
Shaq Thompson
So
out, and he's been their best
Jack
linebacker of
Thompson
late.
is out. Yeah. So I mean, look, Terrell Bernard and Matt Milano look like they're going to play. So this isn't going to be AJ Klein trying to cover Travis Kelce, but I don't know. I don't like the way, I mean, it's a prediction. We go by how it feels, what we think. I mean, there's some analytical stuff you can consider. And there's a 50% chance I'll be wrong, but I just see the Chiefs winning the game. And it also stems from the Bills and their losses. We talked that Atlanta loss really feels bad. It feels like that Jacksonville Jaguars loss when Urban Meyer beat them. As it gets further in the rearview mirror, it just seems to get more and more unforgivable. But who knows? Who knows? That's why they play the games, Jonah. What do you think?
I'm picking the Bills to win, but it's one of these like because of there's so many reasons why I think the Chiefs are going to win. And then I almost feel like there's something I'm missing about the equalness of these two teams and the Bills being the home team and ability to play a little bit better than they played in recent games and the coaching matchup. And because I didn't think the Bills were going to win all of these regular season matchups in years past, and they outperformed my expectations. And I kind of expect some of that from the Bills on Sunday. And the Bills could lose and still fulfill that, like go toe to toe with the Chiefs in a way that maybe we're not thinking they're capable of right now. But if they don't, I think this is a very potentially desolate place to be for the Bills fans that are just very fixated on the Bills winning the Super Bowl championship, and that's the only way to achieve happiness with this Bills team is to go all the way and win it all. Because not but a month ago, and definitely at the beginning of the season, there was this feeling that the Bills didn't have to worry about the Chiefs anymore, that the Chiefs were falling back.
You're right.
That they had their number, and that maybe it was the Ravens or another rivalry, or there could be other hurdles to prevent the Bills from winning the Super Bowl championship.
And
But
then
it wasn't going to be
Rashee
the
Rice
Chiefs.
comes back, and you're like, oh, geez. So that's what the Chiefs are supposed to
Yeah,
look like.
right. And Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy are younger players, and
Travis Kelce's found a spark that he didn't seem to
right.
have last season.
And Patrick Mahomes is not an old quarterback. It sort of seems like a second revival for these Chiefs. And that's not good for the Bills in this window. And I mean, it's okay if you just can accept the Bills for being a very, very good team that has a chance to win the Super Bowl championship. But if you're worried, if you can only achieve true joy from this team by them beating the Chiefs and going to the Super Bowl and winning the Super Bowl, that seems less likely to happen now than it was a couple weeks ago.
I would agree with that. I mean, it's just a couple of weeks ago, the Bills were favored to win the Super Bowl, betting in a betting standpoint. They were the favorites, and now that's been the Chiefs since Rashee Rice came back, and it's like there's like maybe an epiphany about that the Chiefs are not dead.
Yeah, and they're looking like a roadblock for the Bills this year and possibly next year and years beyond, if they keep this momentum going that they've had the last few weeks.
Jonah, thank you. Thanks to everybody out there for listening and watching and for supporting us here at Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK, CPAs and Business Consultants.
The financial needs of a business go beyond tax and attest services. That's why CTBK goes beyond accounting services and offers outsourced solutions through their affiliation with CFO Solutions Plus. These additional services allow clients to focus on their operational and long-term strategic goals. Trust CTBK's outsourced solutions to provide cost-effective, value-added financial services tailored to your company's needs. Call CTBK at 716-630-2400. Again, 716-630-2400. Or go to ctbk.com to learn more about CTBK's outsourced solutions.